Mr. Giuliani also telling the Huffington Post that President Trump could have former FBI Director James Comey shot in the Oval Office and still not be indicted, saying impeachment would have to be the first step. Here now, Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Napolitano. Much to talk about from what Rudy said. Your reaction?
Well, we'll start with the last one. The comment about having James Comey shot is incendiary, outrageous, and just plain wrong under the law. I mean, the president is immune from the rigors of prosecution during the time he's in office so as not to take him away from his presidential duties. But he is not immune from being charged. He is not immune from being indicted. And in the case of a crime of violence, he's not immune from being arrested. This is more extreme than when President Nixon once said, you remember this famous quote, Lee, if the president does it, that means it's not illegal. Forgive the double negative. I'm quoting him exactly. That would make the president a prince. That would remove the president from the confines of the rule of law. That would violate the president's oath to uphold the Constitution. We were talking during the break. Rudy is throwing gasoline on fire. And it's either because his client, the president, likes chaos, or because he and his legal team have decided the best way to undermine Bob Mueller is to make incendiary and extreme statements about presidential power and shove them in Mueller's face. I don't think it's going to work.
Can he pardon himself, you think?
That, of course, has never happened before. The argument in favor of it is the pardoning power has been held by the court to be plenary, absolute, and without check. The argument against it is the rule of law says you can't be a judge in your own case. You can't evaluate your own behavior. And the rule of law is embedded in the Constitution. So I don't know which way that would go. In my view, it's a dangerous thing. I realize Chuck Todd, because Rudy confused the name, put the question to him, so it's not Rudy's fault that he got the question.
Right.
But in my view, it's a dangerous thing for him to be discussing the very concept that the president, in order to avoid complying with the law, would pardon himself. I think would rub most Americans, even people that like him, as I do, the wrong way.
Well, let's turn to the controversy surrounding what President Trump and people within the White House, Trump supporters call Spygate. House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes taking on his colleague, Congressman Trey Gowdy, on Sunday Morning Futures with Maria yesterday. Watch this.
Mr. Gowdy believes that he's been told by the Department of Justice on several occasions that Mr. Trump's not a target. But what I keep going back to is that, well, wait a second. We know from Mr. Comey, he said that the Trump campaign was the reason that they opened up the counterintelligence investigation. So they did open up an investigation in the Trump campaign.
It's two issues here. One is hair splitting over the meaning of the word target and the meaning of the word that Congressman Nunes did not use in that clip but did use elsewhere yesterday, subject. A subject is a person or entity or group that is being investigated by the government to see if the subject committed a crime. A target is a person, entity, or group the government has already decided to indict. You can go from a subject to a target like that, depending upon what the evidence is that is found about you. Second, and this is dangerous, and we've been talking about this for a long time, Congressman Gowdy and Congressman Nunes saw the same raw intelligence FBI documents that you and I can't see. Gowdy looks at it and says, I'm a lawyer, I'm an ex-prosecutor, the FBI behaved appropriately, there was no spy, there was no undercover FBI person in the Trump campaign as Rudy Giuliani claimed. Congressman Nunes looks at the same document and said, I wouldn't put it quite that way. This is the danger of exposing raw intelligence documents to politicians who then draw their own political narrative from it.
So,
do you think that anything will actually happen with this? I know that President Trump talks about it a lot, but is there any actual legal problem here?
Well, if there truly was an undercover FBI agent pretending to be a Republican operative, wouldn't you have known if he was a Republican operative or not, who made his way into the campaign? They would need to have gotten a search warrant to do that, because that's the functional equivalent of full-time surveillance. Every time he's there, he's seeing and listening to what's going on. And if they got the search warrant, I would like to see what they told a federal judge in order to get the judge to sign the warrant. If they did this without a search warrant, they committed serious and grave violations. But, Kat, there is no evidence. I'm relying on Congressman Gowdy, who saw the documents and told me the non-classified parts of what he saw. There is zero evidence that this happened.
Wait. Could the president just release all these documents? Let the American people see them?
No, the president doesn't have these documents. These documents are in the possession of Bob Mueller and his bosses at the Department of Justice. It is highly unusual and almost unheard of for documents in a criminal investigation to be released to the potential defendant, no matter who he is, before the charges have even been filed.
We should point out the Inspector General is looking into this, is he not?
The Inspector General is looking into whether or not the FBI violated DOJ regulations in the manner in which it commenced the Trump campaign investigation and conducted the Hillary Clinton email investigation. And that report, my dear Ms. McDowell, is coming out this week or next week?
Next week.
It's coming out before,
they moved the testimony
before the 4th of July.
They moved the testimony of the Inspector General to next week. I think it's now scheduled for. I'm pulling this one out of my. It's June 11th, I think, is when the Inspector General is supposed to testify. Good to see you.
Pleasure.
Love you much.
Pleasure, guys.
Judge Andrew Napolitano.
Happy Monday morning.
Right on.